All right, what is up, my friends? We got a really exciting one for you tonight. This is a really, really cool one. djWHEAT of Twitch, of esports. It's funny, I dated you, I guess, on Twitter. I was like, over a decade of esports casting. Someone was like 2 decades. I was like, well, I wasn't, going to go that big. But
They aren't
djWHEAT,
wrong. I appreciate that person. I really do.
right, it goes both ways. You're like, yeah, but I occasionally am reminded, a Magic set happened to come out like 15 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that came out 15 years ago? Wow. So, djWHEAT, you can introduce yourself. Twitch, you're obviously very, very good at introducing yourself in many things. So, fire away.
Yeah. I'll try to condense this as long or as short as I can. So, hi, everyone. djWHEAT. Yeah, as Jim mentioned, I kind of got my start in all of this like through esports. I started broadcasting online in about 1999 when it was just audio, and got involved in esports casting, joined some networks, eventually, just kind of kept going with it because I loved it. I've probably casted about 25 different esports titles in many, many, many different countries. I think I've lost count at this point. But
You used to do StarCraft back in the day, right?
StarCraft 2 from like about 2009 until about 2012, 2013, around the same time that Blizzard kind of started WCS officially. At that point, I kind of was like, I want to do Twitch full time. I love StarCraft
Sure.
2. It's like that and Dota 2 are probably two of my most watched esports on Twitch. So I did a lot of that. Been making content and streaming ever since I could, video online, and working at Twitch. I currently head up the Twitch Community Productions, which is actually responsible for all the programming that is on /Twitch, and something I really love. I'm going to celebrate my 10 years at Twitch in October, actually, so I'm super excited about that. But as you mentioned, I've been getting back into Magic, and man, Jim, I just want to preface it with like this statement. I was actually talking to a buddy who is also kind of like, as I've been talking more about Magic, he finally like got into it, which is really cool. It's infectious. But I said, he was like, man, this game's really good. And I'm like, dude, you know what? To think that I was playing this game, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and here it is existing today with how many X times the cards, the sets, and everything else to see how they've continuously kept it alive, like created a method for that to be balanced and have rotation and stay fresh. It's like, it's really, really, really impressive. And it makes other card games, it makes them look like shit.
Yeah, you could say.
Honest,
I knew you wanted to
sorry.
say it, yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy because we get asked the question a lot of like, where's Magic going to be in 20 years? And it's hard to think that like, oh, it's just a card game. There's a lot of fads. There's Pogs and then Pokemon cards, and Magic for a while was kind of like one of those fads when it first came out. And you just assume,
Right.
oh, it's a fad, whatever. And 20 years ago, you can ask the question, where's Magic going to be in 20 years? And I'm not sure people would have thought, it would still be around at this point and to the level that it's at. And it just grown every year for the most part. Arena's been fantastic. And there really doesn't seem to be a reason why Magic can't be here in 20 more years, which is really, really cool.
I completely agree. And it stands almost alone as a unique champion in that. It's hey, let me give credit where credit is due. There are definitely other games that are very, very popular, but I think, just seeing the legacy that Magic has, right? Like, who's going to be able to catch up to that? I don't know if
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
possible. A pack of playing cards is the only answer, and that's
Right.
what that game doesn't change.
That's the cool thing too, is kind of looking at Magic almost in like the lexicon of like, chess, checkers, Monopoly, Scrabble, like thinking about like,
Yes.
where's Magic fit into that? It's interesting though, because obviously Magic is so different in the element of it has so many different cards where, the rook is the rook in chess, and that's basically it. There's no new pieces coming out, whereas Magic, it's always kind of changing, and it's interesting to watch this sort of like legacy style, I don't want to say forever game, but long-term game constantly changing and morphing and changing and morphing. And the design space is so wide. We see things like Hearthstone,
Yes.
Where it's similar idea but a little simpler, and you wonder if it has the legs to kind of have the sort of longevity that Magic's going to have. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah, chat's like, you missed chess too? You didn't see the sequel to chess? You know, all those new pieces?
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Can't believe it.
And cool. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit for your viewers. Is that cool?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. So my name's Jim Davis. I'm playing Magic for, God, I mean, over like 20 years at this point. I mean, just about 20 years, exactly. And I've been playing competitively for about 15-ish of those years. I played in high school. Probably a similar experience to you, honestly, kind of like playing in high school, playing on the lunch tables, just like whatever cards we had, you know. And when high school ended, I started playing Magic Online, which was like the new online version of the game. And kind of like your experience now with Arena, it just got me right back into it. I started playing a lot, and I began playing seriously, going to qualifier tournaments. I played in the Pro Tour.
And you still play online?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my Magic Online account it's ancient. It's the account I had 20 years ago. You know, like I have like the old little avatars. They used to like make a big deal about your little avatar. And the one I use is the one I got. They had a crossover promotion for the 8th edition pre-release where if you like gave them your Magic Online name, they would give you this cute little royal assassin avatar. You know, like that's how old my account is. And it's still the same account that I use on Magic Online. And then of course Arena's new and I have that too. And played in Pro Tours in the late 2000s, traveled the world, went to Japan twice, Hawaii twice, Paris. I played a World Championships in 2006 in the Louvre in Paris. That was cool.
Wow.
Like in the actual Louvre.
That's something we have in common. I've casted an esports event from the Louvre.
That's awesome. Yeah,
ESWC 2006. What year was it?
2006, actually.
Jim has great Magic
it was in December
advice.
2006.
Just not in Strixhaven draft.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so and then after years playing the Pro Tour, I actually I did okay in the Pro Tour where I cashed a few events. I did all right. I was good enough to kind of like keep qualifying and flying to these events for free and stuff, but never had like a big breakthrough finish kind of thing. And I wasn't really doing that well monetarily because of it. So I took a break for a bit, went back to school, and I started playing on the SG Tour, which is of course where we met for the very first time in 2015. I got really deep into that. I won their Players Championship in 2015, and then me and Marcus met on an interview at I believe it was PAX East, right?
Yep, that's correct. On the Twitch stage at the Twitch booth, yeah.
Yes, I was the guest of SEG as their Players Champion, and then from that I was part of the formation of like the first like sort of Magic esports team in Team Metagame Gurus. That didn't really end up really. 2 years of that, and it kind of exploded, but it was still really cool. We were the first folks in Magic to kind of be wearing the esports jerseys and stuff like that, which is cool. And it's been a wild ride. I mean, I've been doing full-time content creation since about 2015. It's about 6 years now.
Yeah, that's incredible, dude. Congratulations, by the way. I mean,
it's crazy. I'm very fortunate. It's definitely, I got in kind of early. I was doing it before Arena came out. And then when Arena came out, big boom there, of course, and I was already on the ground floor. So, YouTube, Twitch, doing the whole nine. And, it is pretty sweet. I am pretty lucky.
So I want to go back a little bit to that, the interview that you talked about at PAX East, because now that was with Star City Games, right? And I kind of met them through Twitch. We were introduced and helped kind of, get them set up and managed on the Twitch side. But Jim, I don't know if you know this, but I raise my hand and I say, I get to take full credit for bringing Magic the Gathering to Twitch.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Back in, I want to say it was 2012. At the time, Magic was like broadcasting on their own CDNs, if I'm not mistaken. And it was kind of like after the big early Twitch esports boom. And my title was actually the senior director of partnerships for new media. And like my job was to go out and think about all the things that like were adjacent to Twitch, but weren't on Twitch yet.
Sure.
And the two big targets that I was like, my goal is to get chess and to get Magic the Gathering on Twitch. Like those are the two things to me that make so much sense that I feel like could grow real big. And so I remember basically getting on my fucking knees, Jim. I'm sorry. I should have asked you if I could.
I allow one F-bomb per stream. I run PG-13.
All right, there it is.
So
PG-13.
That's totally fine.
Okay.
I allow my guests to use it.
I got on my knees and basically said, listen, stream on your own CDN. Let us like help you broadcast it to Twitch. we'll set everything up, give you front page, like we'll do everything. We'll give you like direct lines into our engineers. Like we'll like whatever. Just please let us show you that you could grow Magic on Twitch.
And this is through WotC or through SCG?
This is through WotC. Yeah. Sorry. So this is through WotC. All of this led to meeting Star City Games and then kind of helping them out and whatnot. But they were like, all right, all right, Marcus, you seem pretty passionate about this Twitch thing. Like, sure, we'll give it a shot. And man, let me tell you, Jim, it was rough for like 3 months because I remember specifically there was an event happening in Hawaii. And like I was getting phone calls at like 3 a.m, like, hey man, something's messed up. We need to fix this right now. And I'm like, I'm on it. Let's get it. But that is in my sort of list of Twitch accomplishments, like bringing Magic and chess to Twitch. And like really, I put everything that I had into trying to make that. Obviously, all of their hard work really did most of it.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like one of those accomplishments that I'm very proud of.
That was the Hawaii Pro Tour in 2012.
That would have been it. Yeah.
I think I was at that one. Maybe I was in one. I played 2 Hawaii Pro Tours. My first one in 2006, then a second one. I don't remember which one it was, but yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. It's cool. I love seeing the things on Twitch that aren't just some dude in his underwear playing Call of Duty. That's great too. That's awesome. But like, for example, Sushi Dragon, one of my favorite streamers. I freaking love Sushi.
Right.
I love the creative stuff. I love seeing all the, the different things you can do with the medium, and as someone I've done radio before. I had a radio show at my college radio for a couple of years. I've been in bands, I've done a lot of like creative things like that. And I always really enjoy seeing the people who take the medium in a weird way, where some weird radio show where you're just doing kind of interesting stuff you wouldn't expect, or a band will play and they'll just do something kind of weird and creative and exciting. So it's really, really cool seeing the branch out in that regard.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And like there are so many things that are adjacent too, right? Like, I mean, you play Starcraft. I love Starcraft. There was a while where every Starcraft caster was like engaged in these super intense, asynchronous chess matches and whatnot. Like there's just so much adjacency in all of it too. So it really is cool to see. And when you think about the type of reach that streaming's been able to give, and frankly that to me, I'm so thankful for Arena coming out, and then Arena like coming to mobile too, because Arena's been out for a while, but it was the mobile app that brought me back in. And like I just think it's absolutely incredible that now I'm like, yes, my collection is on this thing. Right, which to a lot of people that's weird, but like 3-4 years ago, I chucked my movie collection. I went all digital. Right. So like, I am like, this is the world I live in. I love it. And it's just been remarkable to kind of come back and sort of re-experience all that. But is mobile, I give it all the credit for sort of being the thing to lasso me back in.
Yeah. Arena. I love Arena. I have complaints about it. I think there's things that can be better about it, but they absolutely nailed the mobile release. Like, when I first downloaded it on my phone, I played the first game on it. I was like, wow, I did not think that this would be possible. I figured like the screen's too small. It's going to be too like fat finger, and stuff like that.
Right.
And I played 2 games and I was like, this is awesome. I'll go to doctor, sit in the waiting room or whatever. Oh, this is great. Let's play a game. It's great. It's awesome. So yeah, they absolutely nailed the mobile release. And it's important, having those sort of, it's the ease of use kind of thing. When the Xbox came out in like 2011 or something like that, 2010.
The Planeswalker game?
Yeah, it was Duel of Planeswalkers, I think.
Yeah.
That was huge. I had friends who
played the hell out of it.
What's up?
I did play the hell out of that.
Exactly.
I remember, yeah.
The players, there are a lot of Magic players in the world who, have played at some point. You go to like a PAX East kind of thing. You take a sample of 20 people and ask them who here has like played Magic at some point. And the answer is pretty high. Maybe they played in middle school, maybe they played with a few friends in camp, whatever it was. And then they haven't played in however long because it's not easy. So you give them an easy way to play and they'll get right back into it. So yeah, Duels of Planeswalkers is big. Arena's super big too. It's good to see. It's really awesome.
Yeah. It really is. So yeah, I mean, like really quickly, I mentioned I played back in college, but I was never really the card owners. It was always the friends who had the big tubs, and right? And I think once we all kind of like went through school or kind of went our own ways, I think for me, losing that ability to play with those close friends is really what, unfortunately, just it became harder to find Magic. Even though I know Magic does a great job with like their in-house, or excuse me, like in shop tournaments, like
Mm.
Friday Night Magic, etc. Like all the promotions that have been done there, all really great. But I mean, now I feel like it's my second era of Magic, so I'm definitely super excited. I think it's been. I wish I could look and see what day I downloaded the client, because I feel like maybe it's been about 3-4 weeks since
Mm.
I've like been in it. Like really, like I'm putting 3 hours a day into playing Magic, which is pretty big accomplishment for any game to get 3 hours of my time. So
So I actually want to
pretty
hear like
excited.
a minute or two about your experience playing Magic back in the day. Like, what did you like? Was it revised you were playing in? Like, what kind of decks did you have? Like, it's always so cool. Like thinking about that, because when I first started playing, I started playing in 7th edition in 2001, I think. Friend bought a starter kit, started playing, and my buddy Gavin was like, "Oh, I played that in revised in middle school. I'll bring my cards in." And he was like, "Here's 4 Sarah Angel, 4 Wrath of God, and 4 Counterspell for your blue-white starter deck. Have fun." He gave me a Tundra too, an unsleeved Tundra, just worth like $500 now. I had it unsleeved in my pocket, all day.
Wow.
So I love hearing the stories about like this sort of like
Yeah.
beginning stages.
So I think the first games I played, it would have been 2 years out. So I want to say it was not, I graduated high school in 95, just to show you where, and that was the year if I'm not mistaken, Magic came out. So I
Mm.
believe it was in college in 97 when I played my first game. Now, when I go back and I look at the old school legacy, cards,
Mm.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's
Mm.
what it looked like. If I recall, and help me here because you're going to
Sure.
find out, like I'm still pretty Magic dumb, but if I recall, I played also right around a time where there was a significant design change in the cards themselves.
Mm.
Does that ring a bell in terms of like, oh
Change
yeah, that
in
was from this
change in
edition to
what
this
way?
edition?
Like what
in
changed?
in actual graphical design, right? Like the um what a card looks like now
Mm.
versus what a card looked like in the late 90s.
Were the borders black or white?
Okay, see that's
Remember? Like the actual like
the
outer
borders
border
were
of the card.
white. Oh yeah.
White. Okay. The first
Yeah.
the first two sets that came out were like alpha and beta, and they were black bordered, and those cards look like dust. They're ancient. Like
Okay.
they just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
printing on them
I've
looks very
seen
very
those.
old. And then like
Right.
revised came out with all white border stuff, and then Magic was white bordered for a while, and then it became black border stuff too with expansions and so on. But yeah, white
Okay.
border is probably revised.
Okay. So yeah, that would have been it. So I feel like during this time, we didn't have online Magic resources. None of us were like experts. So I think between the house, there was probably about, 5, 6 decks
Mm.
that would be, but there was no drafting going on, right? Like nothing like that. It was just like, here's a shitload of cards. Everyone make their decks and like, let's go. So that was kind of like my experience. I wasn't necessarily going out and hitting the shops and trying to find
Mm.
my own decks. I was just sort of experiencing Magic because I had friends that loved Magic, and I'm like, yeah, this is a really cool game, and it's like a great way to pass time. And like, what would we do otherwise? Sit here and play video games together. So
Right.
why not? So, and that was like kind of it. As I mentioned, like played some Planeswalker and was like, oh, that's really exciting, that like some Magic. And I think I remember saying, Jim, man, it'd be really cool if the entire Magic actually existed this way instead of just this.
Yeah.
And which I'm pretty sure was a sentiment many people had. So here we are at Advance, and I feel like I talked about my involvement with Magic and Twitch. Like I was always kind of close enough to it to be picking up some of the noise, right? And
Mhm.
this set is really exciting. This person won a championship that was like unexpected. This thing happened. I would tune in a lot, even though admittedly, prior to their broadcasting really upgrading, I felt like I didn't really. I think I said to you like science dog, right? Chemist dog. I was kind of like, I don't know what's happening, but the commentators are doing a great job explaining what they can. Like, and aside from that, so this is like it since probably let's say 1999, my first like official dive in, because I don't know if that Planeswalkers really counts. Other than now, I know what a Planeswalker is.
Yeah, that's the biggest change for anyone for sure. Is someone hasn't played in however long, they see a Planeswalker and they're like, this is numbers on it. What do I do with this? So that was definitely one of the bigger shifts in Magic design as a whole. So that's cool. What was your favorite card from back in the day when you're playing Revised?
Oh God, you put me on the spot like this, but like if I recall, there was in the house it was like the big FU, and it was a red card that was like 8 mana that destroyed everything.
It's like Jockle Hops or something like that.
Maybe it's not even 8. Maybe it's even more than that, like 10, or maybe it is even what's like an X red mana card from that period.
Well, it was like Fireball and Disintegrate.
Maybe it was Disintegrate.
Yeah, it was just
like I was a big fan of like the red deck. So that was always like the haha, you're done, go. So also we were probably playing Magic like idiots. So
yeah, that's the thing. It's like when I think back to my friend Gavin's deck, he would just crush us, and his deck was like a 3-color deck. He had 4 Underground Seas. This is dual lands, and that was it. And he had like Hypnotic Spectre, Mahati Jin, Shivan Dragon. And back then I was like, we couldn't beat him. He's like, it's just unbeatable. We can't do anything about it. And now I think about it and I'm like, how did Gavin ever cast his spells? He had a double red creature, a double blue creature, a double black creature with all basic lands and 4 Underground Seas. Like it's my mind now as a Magic, professional Magic player. I'm like, how do you ever cast these?
How is it possible?
So it's always funny to like just think about looking back at like the way things were played back then because no one knew any better, and then with the knowledge that I have now, kind of looking back on it, it's always really, really fun.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about your experience playing Magic now. So you get back on Arena, and you're just jumping in. What have you been playing? What kind of are you playing Standard? What kind of decks are you playing?
I'm playing Standard. I play mostly Ranked, and then I just do Standard play. Like I do Standard play to just try different decks, and then once I find a deck that I really like, I'll just like grind out a bunch of Ranked games. I'm like Plat 3 right now.
Okay.
And I feel like I haven't hit my ceiling yet. Games, and definitely the grind hits right there. I can tell because you're getting 1 Chevron versus 2, right?
Right. Yeah. Platinum's where you're actually playing. You're actually playing a rank system at that point. Before that, it's a progression system. You just need to like play enough games and win a third of your games, basically. You'll progress.
Okay.
But in Platinum is where you actually start to rank, and then it progresses where Platinum is all wins and losses, Diamonds is all wins and losses, and then once you get to Mythic, it's like an actual like StarCraft MMR rating where you're being ranked in a certain way, K values and stuff like that too. So Platinum is definitely like that's the first step into a larger world, if you will.
It literally is Diamond in StarCraft.
Yeah, I'd say it's interesting though, because like in StarCraft, in Arena, because it is progressive based on wins and losses, and because you can't fall down a rank once you achieve a rank. So once you make Platinum, you can lose 100 matches in a row and you won't go to gold. So in theory, you could win like 48% of your matches and still make Mythic if you time your losses right. You have your losing streak when you're at the bottom of the level, and you have a win streak and so on and so forth. So progression wise, until you get to Mythic, it is obviously wins and losses, but there's an amount of where you can almost brute force it. And then once you're a Mythic though, you cannot make the higher Mythic ranks without winning, hard matches against good players and good decks consistently.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, I've mostly been playing that. I played 1 draft. I didn't feel very good about how that draft went. It was kind of one of those things where I'm like, I know I'm building a mediocre deck. And so maybe a part of that is just like, that's a part of drafting, or I need to work on that. So I did comment to you when we first had a chit chat, like definitely deck building, drafting. That is like kind of high on my list of things that I feel like I could immensely improve my not only experience, but also just better knowledge of the game and sort of like that thirst for knowledge, doing because I love to compete, right? Like that's why I got into esports, and like whether it's Clash Royale or Escape from Tarkov or Starcraft 2, like, pit me against a human and I am like so incredibly happy. And definitely Magic just it scratches that itch in a real nice way, and like a perfectly timed right amount. So that's kind of what I've been doing, but drafting is the part that I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out on drafting.
Yeah, draft is difficult. Draft is like
Yeah.
the format where it comes down most to your inherent like skill as a Magic player. Like for example, some of the older formats like Modern or Legacy have decks that are very, very linear. You have a deck like you ever heard of a deck called Tron?
No.
Are you familiar with the Urzatron lands, like the 3 Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant?
What do they
So basically
do?
their lands tap for colorless, but if you have the full set of all 3 of them in play, they tap for 2 mana, 2 mana, and 3 mana. So if you can get all 3 out at once, you make a whole bunch of mana. And there's a Modern deck called Tron that's just based on trying as hellbent as possible to get those 3 lands out and cast like 7 mana spells and 8 mana spells on turn 3. So it's a very linear deck in that what it's doing is very much almost like a puzzle more than like a game, because you are playing with your opponent obviously, and people will actually like say this deck is not skillful when it still is, you're still playing Magic. But a lot of the deck is how well can I operate my pieces. I learn the tricks, I learn all the ins and outs of it. You can be really good at playing a deck like Tron, but your general Magic skill might not be that high because you're a one-trick pony. You've learned one thing.
Right.
And I think that drafting is the exact opposite of that. Drafting is the format to play if you want to be a better fundamental Magic player. As far as like knowing how to build your deck, how to be flexible in different situations. Kind of like in Starcraft, where a Tron player is basically a 12 pooler or a cannon rusher, where they perfect their build, they know exactly where to put the pylon, they know where to put all their stuff. But if the game progresses past
if
that
it doesn't work,
they're kind of like,
I
have 12 probes. What do I do?
Oh, I feel like I play many of those individuals on ladder, actually.
Just a few. Just a few.
I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about.
For sure.
Which is
so draft's a great place to learn, for sure.
What I love to, for definitely. And, I like what you said, because I think it also reinforces a way that I've kind of been approaching things, which is I very certainly know I enjoy playing these types of decks. So I have been, I will mess around and just like play matches quite a bit just to try, 5 games of a deck to be like, did I enjoy that when I was in bad situations? Did I feel like I had outs and whatnot? And then that also is just helping me get acclimated more with cards and
that's honestly huge.
Better recognition.
Yeah, that's a very, very important thing for a newer Magic player, is kind of getting in things to do, because you need to be able to be flexible and put yourself in situations and just trying stuff and experiencing stuff. Even as a professional Magic player who's been playing for 20 years, a new set will come out, I'll see a card and be like, that card looks great. And then I'll play a game or two with it. I'm like, nope, that card's terrible. But I didn't know it till I actually put it in play, saw it in the context of a game, play with it for few turns, so that sort of like discovery process is really important, and definitely very, very important with your growth as a Magic player, as we were saying, like kind of the overall growth, which is really, really good.
Awesome. Well, hey, I have a question for you then, because I've been writing down questions that when we talked, I was like, Jim, I'm literally keeping a notepad of questions that I have been writing that like, it's not that I'm too lazy to look them up online. It's just that I know that these are also going to be incredibly polarizing things. So I'd love to just be able to have a discussion about it rather than, read about it. Awesome. Because you kind of talked about one of them, which is like, my first question was, what do you think are some of the most basic errors that a new or returning player would make?
So there's gameplay errors. And it's funny, one of the biggest errors that I talk about is not really a gameplay error. People ask me on stream all the time, how do I get better at Magic? Like, what do I do? What do better players do? And outside of the game, like a pro of actually just playing, is the ability to focus on the things in the game that you can control and ignore the things that you can't. So Magic's a card game. You shuffle your cards. You're going to get mana screwed sometimes. You're going to be at 1 life with a dominating position, and they're just like, oops, lightning bolt, you're dead. These things are going to happen in a game. And focusing on anything like that, which Magic players love to do. I got so unlucky. I got mana screwed. You drew the right card. Focusing and putting any energy at all into that is extremely detrimental to your growth as a Magic player, because most of the time there was something else in the game that could have been done for you to turn the game around. Maybe you missed an attack early on that wouldn't have given him a chance to draw that card, or built your deck differently. There's so many different things you can like work on. And people spend a lot of energy and time not doing that, blaming other things like that. So the ability to, anything that I cannot control, I don't think about, I don't talk about, it just kind of happened. It's honestly, it's good life advice too. And the ability to kind of do that, examine all your games, and just think, if some, John Finkel, professional Magic player, was playing this game, would they have won? Well, if they would have, you can't really complain, right? So you probably should go back and figure out what John would have done, So I think that's a really, really big one.
Okay. That's super helpful to hear. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I am definitely complaining about, like, how did I only draw 2 mana? But that's going to come back in a later question. So let's hold on to that one.
Okay.
However, what I do feel like I am doing, and, one of my good friends is Day 9. And I learned this a lot from Starcraft, is that if I am not able to look back and say, what could I have improved on? I will never, improve. And it's something he teaches a lot in that game. And I definitely have caught myself many times where I'm like, I clearly made a mistake on like the order in which I put creatures out, right? I clearly messed up. I should have put this one down to get this +1, even if so it sounds like that is should be my approach rather than looking at it.
Always looking for the things. I mean, it happens in Starcraft too, where it's like, oh, Zerg 12 pulled me, Zerg Imba, blah, 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 like, oh, Corruptors are too good or whatever. Or this is, and like all that time and energy could be spent examining your game because you're clearly not good, because even the best players in the world aren't good. You watch someone like, was it Maru or someone like nuke their own Broodlord or something like that, or didn't move or whatever, whatever. All these things happen in pro games and you're like, man, they're screwing up, but they're the best in the world. Magic players happens all the time. Some pro will attack their 2/2 into a 2/2 first striker by accident. Oops. Because if the games are really, really hard, and if they're hard for them, they're harder for you. So there's plenty of things to look at and plenty of things to learn and plenty of things to go explore. So it's just that focus on kind of just learning and making sure that you're examining every game, it's for us is really, really important. It's the kind of thing that like, it sounds so stupid and kind of simple when you say it, but so many Magic players just don't do it.
No, absolutely. And clearly it's funny because you can tell the difference between players. And I know I'm playing at like super amateur, like casual level at this point, but you can tell even like who's just making those mistakes. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't expect them to do that because clearly this is the better play.
Right.
And so anyway, it's a learning process. That's good here.
Okay. Magic's really hard.
Right.
Like, I've got a trophy shelf in my living room of trophies I've won or whatever, and like I still make mistakes all the time. I'm constantly reevaluating things. I'm constantly on this series I do Bronze to Mythic we were discussing, where I draft every season. Last season I was struggling. I like did bad like 4 or 5 drafts in a row, so I called up a pro Magic player. I was like, hey, come coach me. I'll pay you. I had Sam Blackham. I was a great player. Coach me for a lesson. There should never be a point where like you can't learn something. Even the best pros can learn from other people too. Brad Nelson's a pro, who's famous for that, of just constantly calling in, hey, you're really good at playing this deck. Teach me. Talk to me. So being able to be humble and able to do that too is really important.
Awesome. All right. So we've actually hit a couple of the questions just in the conversations that we had. So I feel like the biggest question that I come to you tonight is to talk about Mulligans, because it's the area that I do not feel confident. Well, aside from deck building, but I'm stubborn as hell. And to me, like taking a mulligan is basically admitting defeat already. But I clearly have seen situations where I'm like, yeah, I lost this game because I didn't mulligan, right? Like that's on me. However, my questions are as kind of as follows. Like, first off, what is the optimal starting number of lands that I should be hoping for and looking for? And maybe to the other side, like what is the absolute minimum I would ever consider using? I know that could be a dynamic answer too, based off of what cards you have in your hands. But I also want to hear like the thoughts about mulligans going first or going when you're going first or your opponent's going first. And the reason I ask that is because I feel like if I am in a situation where I have to mulligan and I am going first, I feel like I have already lost the game.
So mulliganing is extremely contextual, because there are certain like times in matchups where you're more apt to mulligan, Like for example, an example would be, say you're playing against a combo deck that's trying to put together this game-winning combo on turn 4, and you're playing an aggressive creature deck. You're much more apt to mulligan because all that matters is you have a good start. I have to have a one drop.
That's it. You're talking about specifically in a best of 3 situation.
Yeah, that is true.
Right?
I mean, there are times where you'll know your matchup otherwise, but yeah, I mean, most of the advice I'm going to give is best of 3 because it's what I play a lot. But so that is one heuristic, where you kind of know what the matchup is, or kind of like even just like your deck, So if you're playing an aggressive deck, you know what your plan is. Your plan is to get out early, kind of Zergling Rush style. You want to have a 1-drop and then a 2-drop and then kill a creature and play a trick and kill him by turn 4 or 5. Whereas if you're a control deck, you have more time. Your goal is to make land drops, kind of draw cards and find answers and stuff like that. So you're kind of looking at your hand, not from an objective like do I need X or Y lands. It's more of is this hand going to be able to execute my strategy well enough for me to survive the first few turns of the game and get to my strategy? Or is this hand not going to be able to do that? There are plenty of hands that are 3 lands, 4 spells that you would mulligan because they're just not functional in one way or another. An example would be mono red in standard. The mono red deck is mostly 1-mana creatures, 2-mana creatures, a few 3s, and then a few copies of the card Embercleave. Are you familiar with that card?
Mm-hmm. Well, I could not tell you what it is, but if I saw it hit the board, I would know what the art would look like. And
it's a big lightning sword. Yeah, basically it's an equipment that costs a lot but costs less for each attacker, and it gives the creature double strike +1/+1 trample. It's a big killing blow.
They're just trying to
so you basically, you turn 4, you attack with all your creatures, they block 1, you Embercleave and just kind of blow them out. It's a very, very powerful card. So if you open up your opening hand with your mono red deck and your hand is 4 mountains, 2 Embercleave, and 1 4-mana creature, doesn't matter that you have a good mix of lands and spells because you can't do anything. You have the one piece, which is the Embercleave, but not the creatures to actually put it in play. So it depends on the cards in your deck. Maybe you're a more synergistic deck that needs to get A, B, and C card together, then you mulligan a little more aggressively. Or if you're a redundant deck, like a deck like Burn, where all of your cards are just, deal 3 damage, deal 3 damage, deal 3 damage. In that case, your deck is redundant, so you won't mulligan as much because all your cards do the same thing anyway. So as long as you have a few lands and a few spells, you'll be okay. So it depends on the style of deck you're playing. Depends on, even the matchup can matter, what kind of deck are they playing. And then what you're saying about being going first or going second, it matters. You get the extra draw going second, so you can be a little more liberal with your with your mulligans.
Yeah.
But you're also on the draw, so if your hand is kind of slow, you run the risk of they're going first. They really get off to a fast start, and then I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to stumble and lose. So one important thing, I think the most important statement you can encapsulate mulligans with is you don't have to mulligan. You get to mulligan. It is a benefit. It is not a detriment. So if you look at your hand and it's 7 lands, you get to put those cards back and take a new 6. You get a chance to give yourself agency over what's my game going to look like this game. Maybe I'm down a card, sure, but not being down a card. There's plenty of games you win without casting your last card. It can matter.
Sure.
In certain matches, especially that are all about trading and so on and so forth. But it's more about having the agency to be able to decide how the game is going to play out. And yeah, occasionally you'll just have no lands and mulligan 2 and lose, whatever. That happens. But you don't necessarily want to mulligan, but you do get to if you need to, and it's an important option to have.
Got it.
Did I hit all the bases on that one? Or
yeah, I think, I'll tell you what, the biggest learning takeaway I take from there is that oh yeah, I'm kind of an idiot, because when I think about mulligans in the context in which you said best of 3s, that makes way more sense to me, because I've only pretty much been playing best of 1 capacities, right? The draft I played is best of 1. And so that actually is the follow-up question is, when do you play best of 3 ever in Arena? Is that a thing?
So basically for draft, I always play best of 1. I just find it more fun. It's just you see more decks, it's faster, and it's better for streaming too, because the games kind of go quick. For any tournament, basically ever, you're playing best of 3. Draft tournament,
right?
Tournament.
So but is that actually in Arena?
Yeah, it's called traditional X. So traditional draft, traditional standard, traditional historic. That's their way of denoting best of 3 versus best of 1. The one of the issues with the Arena client is that it's pretty unclear as to what mode is which, and they hide some of those modes behind the advanced play tab. So if you don't hit the little advanced play button, you won't
Right,
even see best of
right.
3. You know, and the reality is that, like, if you go to F&M, you're playing best of 3. If you go to a Grand Prix, you're playing best of 3.
Right, right.
So
Of
basically
course,
everything, you know, because the Magic is a game with some amount of variance, you know, where you want to play 3 games. Just like in Starcraft, you don't see Cyril and Rogue playing a best of 1 game. Like, they play a match, you know, of some kind. So, you know, so the Mulligan, you know, I naturally just like best of 3 is to me just what Magic is, you know. I'll play best of 1 occasionally if I'm like on the run or something like that, but I'll play best of 1 in limited and then occasionally constructed, but mostly I play best of 3.
Got it. Okay, that's super good. I think we probably played best of 3, but way back in the day. But I don't know that we even Mulligan. Like I don't even remember. So
Oh, actually, one more thing
that's
that's
helpful
important
though. Yeah,
is that in
yeah.
best of 1 on Arena, there's actually a hand smoothing algorithm. So what it does is behind the scenes, it actually draws you 2 hands, and it keeps the one that has a better land to spell ratio, so you mulligan less. So because it's only 1 game, they're trying to like limit the amount of variance. So you're not just like, oops, no lands, I lose.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of that going on too. So you'll actually mulligan less often in best of 3 than best of 1 than best of 3.
And like the companions are a thing too, which I didn't realize. Like I kind of stumbled upon where I'm like, wait a second, why does this like rando card keep showing up here all the time? Until I finally had to look at. Oh, okay, that's
that's a weird one. That's definitely
is that in traditional? Is that like
yeah,
that
that's
is
in everything?
a
Yeah,
mechanic in all the sets? Yeah.
And the companions actually, when they first came out, were heinously broken. So now the companion rule is you pay 3 mana, and the companion goes to your hand. It used to be you could just cast it. So if you had a companion in your deck, you effectively had an 8-card hand, and like the black-white one, Luris of the Dream Den, is already really, really good. Sees a ton of play in its nerfed state. In its pre-nerf state, it was in like half the decks in every single format: vintage, legacy, modern.
And it doesn't is that the one that's like your drawing hand is guaranteed to be X or whatever? I don't know.
So each one has a stipulation as far as deck building goes. So you can't have one of those unless you follow the rule that it gives you. And for Luris, the rule is every permanent in your deck has to cost 2 or less. So you can't play a Planeswalker or a creature that costs more than 2. So your deck has to follow those rules. But cards that cost 1 and 2 are great anyway. So, you know, so it's just good in like a whole bunch of different decks.
Right. Okay. So I know we're going to talk about deck building, so I'm just going to like keep some of these for like Friday. I have 2 more that I kind of want to ask you. I hope that's okay. So one is a very nuanced question about order, just so that I don't make any mistakes. And like sometimes I find myself playing games like I am going to try this because I think it works this way, and I am fully ready to find out that that is not the case, right? So this time though, I had an instance where it happened, but I was like, I still feel like I want confirmation because I want to make better decisions. So so this is about order. And I was in a situation where I had Magic Missile, and he had a 1/1 and a 2/2 out. His 1/1 was when a creature you control dies, gain a +1/+1 counter.
Okay.
So the Magic Missile lets you choose like number of targets and distribute the 3 damage to the 1/2/2. Client asked me to choose those 2 cards. I assume that the order in which I choose them is the order in which it will resolve. In this case, it did work, and it killed the 1/1 first, and then the 2/2. But did I get lucky, or is that accurate in that like I pointed to this card first, so it is going to resolve first, and then I pointed to that card, right? Because obviously I would have been screwed if the 2/2 took its damage first, because then he would have been buffed to a 2/2, and that second point of damage wouldn't have done.
Yeah, so basically whenever you choose targets for things like that, or you resolve a single spell, everything happens exactly at once. So there's no way you could have gotten screwed there. And
There's
then
like literally no way that
correct. And then for an ability like that, so it says that when the creature dies, it would make a different creature bigger. That ability has to actually go on the stack too. So you would kill the creatures. That ability actually goes on the stack, but there's nothing there to target, so it would just go away. So
Okay, so but in that case, it would buffed itself when other creatures died. But because they technically die at the same time, that is why there's no resolution.
Correct. Yeah. So it just everything happens all at once basically, and then it actually like the way the rules actually work is so the creatures take the damage. They don't actually die yet, and then once the spell finished resolving, then the game like checks itself. It's like, okay, are there any creatures that have damage on them? Oh, they do. Okay, they're dead, and then they die, kind of thing. You know. So it's always kind of like checking things. So occasionally you'll see on Arena, say you have a card that says creature gets -3/-3 and draw a card. So you'll play it. The creature will go to be a 0/0. It'll be a 0/0 sitting there on the board. You'll draw your card to finish like resolving the spell. And then once the spell goes away, then it dies, you know? So it's sort of like once the spell finishes resolving, it checks everything, makes sure everything's okay, and then goes from there.
Okay. That's interesting because then it's like, oh man, maybe I'm overthinking some of this, but that's helpful to like think about it. It's one all segments of time are happening at the same time. Like I can do that.
There's a lot of like magic's very complicated. There are a lot of like weird little rules things and timing things and like little tricks you can do as far as like stacking things and abilities, and like learning all that is like part of what it takes to be like, you know, a very accomplished Magic player, because you need to know basically how to manipulate all those things, you know, where you'll have 3 abilities and you need to order them in just the right way to get the proper benefit, you know, or your creature will die or whatever it is. So it's, you know, the stack can be tricky. It's probably the hardest part of the game. As far as it's also the thing you usually don't see in Magic alike games like Hearthstone or Runeterra, where you're not building a stack of things that happen like that. You know, the last in first out kind of stack.
Well, I've been playing your Venture Forth deck actually, and
sweet.
That's been a lot of fun. So yeah.
Cool.
But a lot of stacking there. That's been a lot of fun. That's cool. That's super helpful. All right, one other question, and then I'm gonna save some of these probably for Friday.
Okay.
So there are definitely quite a few add-ons and companions that seem to be available for the desktop version. Are there any that you would personally recommend or feel are great for learning? And are there any websites that I should also be frequenting? Data aggregators, articles, etc. I know I Cool Stuff Inc. is one that I've already checked out. In fact, I have no shame in saying like I ripped off and have been playing 2 Jim Davis decks pretty successfly from the 10 that he released. So
I pause right there.
Yeah,
it's funny you say ripped off. I think there's like a common sort of old school, almost like I would say less initiated thing in card games and Magic is the idea of like net decking, you know, where you took someone else's deck. Well, that's not your deck. You're just taking their deck and playing it. That's like cheap, you know. But I think that's a notion that was very, very prevalent back in the day. And as time has gone on, it's definitely like dispelled a bit because it's very similar to chess. You know, you don't sit down for a game of chess and your opponent plays the Sicilian defense and you're like, really, bro? The Sicilian? Aren't you gonna play your own moves?
Exactly.
You know, it's the same thing where like, you know, copying decks is great. Like copying decks is awesome, you know, and there's a reason why people who are good deck builders are good deck builders, and copying their decks and playing them gives you an opportunity to sort of like see what is about the deck that works and doesn't work and so on and so forth, and then make your own changes. And you get to see like, well, took out these 4 cards and now the deck doesn't work anymore. So put those cards back in and now I see why they're there, you know, and because it gives you an opportunity to tinker. You know, you're learning from the wealth of knowledge. And that's why these sort of collaborations are cool, because I feel like a lot of Magic players are very, very insular. It's a very like almost like bubble community where it's called the hive mind, like it's referred to, where people start working on a deck and the hive mind's been working on this deck where some person played it in a tournament, everyone played it online, they iterated a little bit and made it better, then they played it online in a different tournament, and like the hive mind is sort of like as a collective working on this deck, you know. And I feel like when you talk to someone who's less familiar with it, maybe they're a Hearthstone player who's a Magic player now, and they have different points of view that you wouldn't have seen from your own little Magic bubble. So that's why it's really cool to like, talk to someone outside the bubble and kind of collaborate in that way, which is really cool. So, but yeah, I think that you know, playing other people's decks is great. I think it's the kind of thing where you get to learn a lot from it. You can see how certain people build certain decks. Some players build decks in one way. Some players build decks in a different way. And then eventually, once you've learned these things, you've read the books, you've learned the Sicilian, learned the Queen's Gambit, you put that together into your own style, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that sentiment too. I mean, like I'm partially joking when I said, cause I was like, well, Jim wouldn't publish them if he didn't want them, ripped off. Like, I think that's
also
how
dare you play my deck.
Really impressed with also like the ability to then just click a button and import that right into Arena. Like, it's great.
That didn't exist so long ago. Back in the day when it was like the only Magic site was like the dojo back in like, the early 2000s. And like, there was no net decking really because people just, you would be known in your area for playing a certain deck and the people in California would have no idea. So Magic, definitely that was a big change in Magic was sort of this like free flowing of information, and it has its downsides in that like, things feel solved sometimes, where the hive mind has been iterating on decks in this format for 2 months now, and it feels like this is just the best deck. It just feels solved, and that doesn't happen that often because people will say that, and then someone will build a new deck that beats it, and stuff like that. But has pluses and minuses, but definitely as far as the spread of knowledge is really, really cool.
Well, I mean, that's definitely one thing that's also been just really exciting for me on the return is that I love the variety, right? To me, Magic is a lot like a puzzle game. That is right. You're a puzzle that you're trying to figure out against another player. I definitely feel like, well, yes, I understand there's some RNG, there's some random draw, there's a lot of like math and theory behind it all, and I really love that. Now, except for a few dirty decks out there, I won't necessarily name, but there's like a couple where I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like garbage right here. But then I think once I like figure out how to face them, then it's different, right?
It's like playing a video game where the boss keeps sweeping you and you're like, that's so cheap, why do you keep doing that? And you're like, oh, I guess I got a block or something, or I have to do this or that or whatever, and eventually you figure it out and you're like, oh cool, okay, sweet.
Oh yeah. I will share. Banshee Hero in chat is asking, so like my first experience with this was milling decks.
Okay.
I'm like, what? This can't work. And then, all of a sudden I lose and I'm like, I'm never losing that again. And then like, maybe I lose a second game. I feel like my record since has been pretty good because I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to go super aggro on you. And there's literally nothing that you're going to be able to do.
And mill decks are a kind of deck where they don't actually do anything until they win. Because if they mill 50, 80 of your cards, okay. Sure, that's fine.
Exactly.
Doesn't really matter. So I get picture you getting mad at the mill deck and being like, you know what? I'm playing 600 cards in my deck. Let's go. Just keep adding cards.
Right.
Keep adding cards.
Not like, I didn't go that route. I was like immediately like, oh, they're literally you just are gonna do like that's your win condition. Great. My win condition is to get you to 0. I'm gonna do it as fast as I possibly can. But yeah, that's like one of those where I had a night where I just had like 3 in a row. It was probably right before Plat, and I was just like, what is this? So anyway, cool. So I don't know that we fully answered the questions, but any other like web resources that I should maybe be thinking about? I've checked out Arena Tutor. I've checked out Untapped. I don't know if like there's any others I missed.
I think Untapped is great. Untapped, tracks all your stats and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
And they give you like the full gamut where like you can see the deck you're playing, what changes you've made to it, your win record with each iteration of a deck. Like Untapped is definitely really, really great. It's almost like a poker tracker from back in the day where it just keeps all your information. You can go back and look at it.
Totally.
Obviously articles are great, videos are great. Series like my Bronze to Mythic series is really good as far as, looking for a series that kind of takes you from A to B to C, where you're progressing through and learning a format as things go on. Just like watching content is great. There are some people who are better at explaining stuff than others. I think it's good to find people who are good at explaining to sort of like the level that you're at. If you watch like a super high level Paulo Vitor Demo de Rosa video on like how to sideboard in the, the whatever Phoenix Mirror, like that's not going to do much for you. Just like reading a book on how to play advanced end game strategy in poker wouldn't do much for you. So or on poker, chess. So definitely looking for content that's sort of like in your wheelhouse, in your range of expertise, and then just being available to it. I think just being able to be listened, take different things in different areas, different decks, and just try and pick up on the general trends that are important in Magic. Like kind of card advantage, how to sequence your spells, like you're saying, mulligans, open hand decisions, and things like that. General deck building things. There's a lot of like just kind of general things you'll see if you watch enough content across many different. Whether it's different decks or videos and things like that. Chat's reminding me too, Scryfall is really good too. You ever heard of Scryfall?
I haven't heard of Scryfall. That would be
it's
a
like
new one.
the best Magic database basically. It's scryfall.com, I think, and basically it's just the best search engine for Magic cards. You can search by anything you want, format. I want to find cards that are crab cards. Type in crab. Whatever it is. I want to find more goblins or, it's. I think the arena deck builder is pretty good too. It's a little annoying to like go through the pages sometimes, but Scryfall is perfect if you're looking for cards for a certain deck. Say you want to know, say like that Bard class deck, for example. I want to see all the green and red legendary creatures in the format. You go to Scryfall, hit legendary, red, green, standard, and so on and so forth. It's really cool.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna definitely keep tabs on that. I have like a bittersweet love-hate relationship with the Magic deck builder because it is inadequate on mobile. Yeah. And like that's kind of where I want to use it the most.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doable, but I feel like I am doing 10 more steps than I need to do. Definitely, at least I'm like when I sit down at the PC client, I'm like, okay, wow, this is robust now. But I kind of want to be sitting around, like somewhere else being like, all right, I'm just going to do like build decks now. But maybe I put these two together and then.
Yeah, I would say that's the limitation of just like the small screen at that point. I tend to like not really build decks at all on my phone. I'll like just grab it like that.
I play on my iPad. This is like my Clash Royale and Magic the Gathering console is basically what it is, and I take notes on it.
Sweet.
But yeah, I'm really impressed with the iPad version. It's good, but deck builder. Definitely hoping that they keep
more keyboard and mouse than fingers for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So you want to fire up Arena and take a look?
Yeah, sure. As long as you promise like not to laugh, right? Because
I might run the laugh track once or twice behind the scenes, but
okay. All right.
But I do that anyway, so.
The other question I had too, because like I did put in my miles with the pre-made, right? What do they give you, like 15 or 13 or something, whatever that is. So and played them all, right, to just again get familiar, like see what people are doing. Didn't really modify them at all. I'm curious, of all the pre-mades, do you have a favorite?
I haven't played them actually.
You've never played them.
Just skipped it. It's sort of like a thing where I look at someone who's sort of like in the stage of Magic that you're at, where you're sort of like bright-eyed, you're kind of exploring new things, whatever, and I get a little jealous, honestly, because I'm just a grizzled grumpy old Magic player.
I understand that so much, because I'm the same way on a lot of other things, but I get it. I feel like I should have anticipated that answer. Like, this is one of those moments in Magic where I'm like, yeah, I misplayed that, but that's okay.
Sure. It's the thing like where I kind of miss that, like I used to like lay out my deck when I was in high school on my bed, and it was like 64 cards, and I'm like, what card am I going to cut? What card am I, just like that sort of wonder of like, ooh, what's this card? I've never seen this card before. I've seen all cards. I know all the cards. Any new card that comes out, I do a set review on it. Like there's no wonder. I love Magic, but that part of like wonder and mystique is definitely an element that you don't get as a pro Magic player, which is
what
a
little
unfortunate.
When new sets come out? Does that change with new sets? Like, does it?
As soon as the full card list is out, I'm doing a set review. I'm going over every card. So
yeah, I mean, but you get that feeling again, right? Like
the first decks that you build in a new format are always really fun. Like I do a thing called 10 new brews, where every new set I build 10 new decks, and like that's one of the funnest pieces of content that I do, because it's new. Everyone's playing new decks. It's always really it's as close as I'm able to get to that sort of like bright-eyed wonder and innocence. So for sure, that's why I love doing those.
Awesome. All right. You want me to let me switch over to my my other thing. So give me 1 second to switch over my.
Chad is saying that my innocence is withered, shriveled, and dead. They know me very well. There we go.
All right.
So let's go.
Are you
Yep, I can see it. I'm actually going to
good?
resize it on my side if I can do this. Make that a little bit bigger. Yep, we're good. Excellent.
All right, and
oh, perfect. Great.
There's me. Yeah. So what do we? You mentioned maybe like looking at decks right now. You can see I'm fully stacked on gold and gems and ready to draft on Friday. So
nice, excellent. Yes, and for those who are watching, we're gonna do a draft on Friday morning, which should be a lot of fun too. Which is really really cool. So yeah, that switch on the top right, the arena play mode switch. That's like the advanced switch. So once you hit that, you can go in and see the best of 3 and things like that. So traditional, anything that says traditional is best of 3. Not sure.
Okay.
So you can go like this. So there's the play queue, and I think there's like a traditional play queue below. There you go. So like it's brawl, traditional standard play.
Oh, so traditional standard play. Oh, it says it actually.
Exactly.
There is a
yes, it's not like it's not super clear, and it's when I see someone who doesn't know about it, they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even know that, and like they definitely the UI could be a little clearer about it, but that's how you get to best of 3.
Wait, so does it keep a separate
Nope.
like ranking?
Same
for you?
ranking.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
So like any constructed match you play in either historic or standard is all constructed. Then any limited you play, as long as it's ranked, will be in your limited rank. So it can be different formats, things like that. It's all kind of put into one rank.
Okay, got it. Got it. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So what's your season decks?
Yeah, great. So I'll kind of show you. So the decks that I've been playing the most over the last week or so are the Bard's Tale deck. I just really enjoy that one.
Yeah, it's a wild one. It's very fun.
It is fun. It is absolutely a lot of fun. I like the sort of class aspect of it. I'm also like a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan, so like I'm really enjoying like that also being an aspect of like, oh wow, I just started playing Magic and look at this D&D set comes out. Like how convenient, right? The Bard's Tale deck I really liked. It's kind of funny because if I'm not mistaken, you were like, this was your like top performing deck when you did your brews, isn't that right?
Yeah, this deck popped off on my brews. It went crazy. I think I won, and for my brews I do best of 1. I think I won 5 games in like 18 minutes. Like it just went woo, and I haven't played a ton of competitive standard since the brews because the format right now is a little bit stale. A lot of the cards from Throne of Eldraine are just really, really, really good, and they've been legal in standard now for like it feels like 3 years. And people are just tired of playing against Bonecrusher Giant, Questing Beast, Embercleave.
Right.
So, like, I've been playing other formats for the most part. So, I'm not sure if this deck is, like, a top-level tournament caliber deck. But
oh, yeah.
It's definitely...
this is definitely fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, a perfect... Like, it could compete, and then also it's just like a really, really fun, crazy deck that can do a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah. And then I would say one of the second most played decks, actually, which is a deck I did not like at all at first. And then I kind of figured out a lot of ways that it was pretty good against some of the meta decks that I was running into, at least in Platinum. So I've been playing this Venture Forth deck quite a bit. I was really interested in just kind of like playing with some of the new mechanics. The dungeon mechanic, I kind of wish there was like one more dungeon in a way, right? Because I don't know. Maybe this is just like I probably shouldn't even be talking about any sort of design at all. But I do wish that there was like a life dungeon that was almost exclusively focused on just getting life.
It's tough because the option paralysis sets in, where you activate a venture ability. And you just have so many options, like even with the 3, it's like, it's not only thinking about what do I want at this exact second, it's thinking 2 turns down the line. No, on the 3rd time I venture, do I need a blocker or do I need extra mana? Do I want to scry? Do I want to go for the big prize at the end? Do I want to go for the shorter one? And then the Tomb of Annihilation is the crazy one where like everyone's losing life. Don't want
Everyone
to go
says
down
line.
that crazy path. So I get why they stopped at 3 because it is kind of wild.
It would be too much. That makes a lot of sense too. Like that's a more reasonable reason than my head could come up with. I usually prioritize the Dungeon of the Mad Mage.
Mhm.
I especially because there's the Hama card that
Yep.
doubles the ability. I feel like pretty regularly that combo's easy to get out. I think people underestimate like the doubling your, having your dungeons trigger a second time is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Of course, you go that route, you can't play or you can't really do the Tomb of Annihilation without being ready to lose life and whatnot. But I've had a lot of fun with this one, so I just want to say thank you for that too.
Sweet. Yeah.
Um,
This
yeah.
was definitely the I am gonna try the new mechanic to its absolute maximum. I think that one of the things I'll do when I'm building new decks in a new format, that's a good thing to do overall, is just take whatever the new mechanic is and turn the dial to 11. Just put every card in. Don't some Magic players will just kind of take their old deck and add 4 new cards in and just do that. I think for new formats and new mechanics and stuff like that, you want to go to 11. Just put them all in there and just see what happens. Because obviously they made the mechanic for a reason. They made the cards the power level they are for a reason. Test them out, see how good they are. I think that learning process is really important. Just the ability to just throw it in, give it a try, let it ride, see it in play, see what it looks like when a card or mechanic is in play for the first time. And that happens in Limited too, honestly, where one of the things I'll say in Limited a lot is if you open a pack and there's 2 cards you're looking at, and one of them's a rare and one of them's a common. Maybe it's a good common removal spell, or this rare creature that has some weird ability you're not really sure about. I always lean towards taking the rare because you have less opportunity to play with the rares because you don't open them as much, and you just want to see how good it is. Just take this.
Right.
That's the fun of Magic is the exploration, kind of just seeing how A works with B and B works with C, and just kind of let it all ride. And then the Bard's Tale deck, when I built all 10 new brews, that one felt like this is kind of cool, whatever, I guess. Then I played 2 games with it, and I was like, wow, this card goes off. I activated the 3rd ability on the Bard class, and then I went from 1 card in hand to 15 and 15 creatures in play in 1 turn. I was like, oh my god, this is not something that usually happens in a standard format. This is I'm playing Legacy or something like that. So, and I wouldn't have thought that, honestly. When I built the deck, I was like, oh, this card's kind of cool. I'll try this card, whatever. So that exploration process is a very, very important part of deck building and just Magic in general.
Right. That's I mean, super insightful, and what you said is pretty accurate in terms of okay, wow, this ramps. So the other control blue black that I was just more or less wanting to understand if someone's playing a control deck against me, when this is not particularly a style that I enjoy playing, Jim, but it's one of those things where it's to defeat the enemy you must become the enemy.
It's very true.
I run into a lot of control decks in Platinum, as you can imagine. So I was I'm gonna play kind of a meta blue black that I think I just made a few changes to, nothing too significant, to understand okay, what are the weaknesses that I'm experiencing when I'm playing this, so that I can be smarter about playing it. But I don't know. Sometimes it's fun, but it's just not necessarily the style that I really enjoy. And I feel like that is also a big part of Magic. Everyone seems to have this own little my affinity towards this color or this combination. I prefer to play those types of decks rather than any. I don't know. Maybe that's just a new player perspective.
No, that's absolutely true. Honestly,
Okay.
I think that there's definitely specialists who can only play one deck. Then there are people like me who kind of have preferences. I think I have a pretty wide range where I'm able to play basically any kind of deck for the most part. I am a long-time professional tournament player. I'll play the weird combo deck if I think it gives me the best chance to win. But personally, my comfort zone is often with control decks that are very, very reactive and kind of slow, or with decks that are very synergy based. It's funny because I love using the Starcraft analogies because they kind of work really well. Goblins is a favorite deck of mine, and Goblins is it's a deck for older formats, usually more modern, legacy, historic, and it's a kind of deck where it's very similar to Zerg in how it treats its resources. So Zerg, on the front face, people, they think of Zerg as like, oh, it's a Zergling rush. I know what that is. They're just really, really fast and they try to get you. You know,
right.
But the reality in Starcraft is Zerg is not like that. Zerg's more of like an economic race. They're usually ahead of base. You know, usually they're kind of playing very reactionary to trying to figure out what their opponent's doing and kind of counter it, trying to kind of beat everywhere. All their units are weaker, but they work really well together. And Goblins is very, very similar to that. Like, Goblins is very similar where the individual pieces themselves aren't particularly powerful.
Right.
But put them in the right way and they're very good. It's very economic. You draw a lot of cards. You kind of play a sort of like defensive game plan, but you can all of a sudden just come out of nowhere and attack for 20. You know, similar to Zerg, where all of a sudden there's just like this Baneling bust or whatever it is.
Yeah, where'd it come from?
And it's funny, and like seeing, you know, my personal preference in both games to be such a very similar strategy, and seeing the kind of like crossover is like really, really cool because that's just the way I like to play. I like being reactive. I like being economically focused. I like being kind of grindy and like, you know, not necessarily playing cards that are individually good. I like playing the cards that work together in some way to make something bigger than what they are. So I love like kind of grindy decks like that. I love control decks. Yeah, but that's definitely a big thing. Even the players who are flexible and are, you know, the highest level players have preferences. You know,
Sure.
Brad Nelson is known as a player who loves like kind of mid-range, high power level decks. Kind of the opposite of what I like. He likes decks where all of his cards are really, really, really good, and there's all the best cards in the format, and he kind of just beats you on raw power, you know, and stuff like that. And that's kind of like the opposite of what I like, you know. So that stylistic thing is definitely a very real part of it. And, you know, players who are able to break that a bit and have a wider range and be able to kind of play a different deck when necessary, it's an important skill to have. But those biases are very relevant in almost every player.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like that was evident even back in the day, right? Like, Scott loved to play black decks all the time. Right. I love to play red deck, right? Yeah, so that's good. I've been, you know, for me, the learning is, you talked about Magic being a lot about exploration, and right, like that's, I think, one of the things that's just been so great about this experience is just like, I'm like, I feel like I'm just soaking up knowledge nonstop, right? The fact that I'm like, one day I'm like, I've seen this card 100 times, but I still don't know the name of it. Oh, I remember the name now. Like, success, we did it.
There's a lot.
I know there is.
My brain is like, as I've been playing for so long. I mean, we'll play like, you know, silly games in the car on waste tournaments, and we'll play a game like, you know, name a mana cost, and we just need to like go around the car and keep naming cards. So, you know, red green, and I'll say Bard class, and you say Gallia of Endless Dance or whatever, and you keep going until someone can't do it anymore. And like, I win that game every time. I just have like an encyclopedia knowledge of like basically every card ever printed in the last 20 years. You know,
I believe
like,
it.
I don't know what I'm losing to that I got pushed out by that, but it's all there from playing so much over the years. So, you know, it's a real never ending pool of that knowledge. It's always growing too. It's just new cards. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so lastly, the one, I guess there's two more, right? I've been playing what I would say is a pretty standard mono white ramp deck, and then like a red green more meta deck as well. I enjoy them, but I still kind of feel like I'm finding something where I'm like, oh, I just like, I could play this deck forever, and it would be, you know, I'd just be so happy with that.
Do you want to do a little like deck doctoring?
What's that?
Do you want to do a little like deck doctoring where I kind of go over
a
little bit?
For sure.
All right, so the big thing I'm seeing right off the bat is that there are a lot of individual cards. Are you like flush with wild cards? Are you like limited on your wild cards? What's your like? Because card availability is like, it's one of the factors in the game that like I don't really deal with because I just have everything because that's what I do, you know.
Right.
It's a thing that like some players where I have X amount of dollars to build a deck. I mean, budget content is honestly very popular. MTG Goldfish has a lot of budget content where, you know, I have $40 and I want to build a modern deck. What can I build, kind of thing. So what's your like, you know, budget range or wild card range or things like that?
I mean, right now I have 127 commons,
Okay,
176 uncommons, 17 rares,
it's
and
pretty good.
13 mythics. I feel like I'm decent. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the biggest things about like a deck that's going to be more competitive is the maxing out on the cards that are your best cards. So like the previous deck, the blue black control deck had more like twos and threes. This deck has a lot of ones.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one
Right.
Daxos, one Skyclave Cleric, one Speaker of the Heavens, one Heliod. So basically, the most important thing is to identify kind of like what does my deck want to do. What is the ideal kind of start for my deck? Real important, real big one. Not only in deck construction, but also in in-game strategy is how is this game going to end? And I'll use Starcraft against it. It's a common ground.
Right.
Is
What's
this
the
game
win
going to end with
condition?
a big doom drop in your base? Am I just going to, have a timing attack on two bases and kill you? Is the game going to end by the map being mined out and me just like having more resources than you? It's sort of like going into the game, having an idea of what that end game is going to look like, and then building your deck to build towards that, and then both playing your game to build towards that for as well. For example, I'll use the Goblin deck as an example. One of the powerful attackers in the Goblin deck is called Goblin Pile Driver. It's a creature that has the ability, whenever it attacks more goblins, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So there are some times where you play against a deck that's not playing creatures or trying to combo you or something like that, where it's your most important card because you can kill them quick. And there's sometimes you'll play against an aggressive deck where your entire plan changes and you'll just block with that card on turn 3 just to save 5 life.
Right.
Because you understand that your end game is going to be, well, they're going to try and kill me really fast, but as long as this game goes on for like 5 or 6 turns and I don't die, I'll be able to draw more cards than them and eventually kill their creatures, and they have no sort of end game to speak of, so I'll win the long game. So that ability to kind of like look what the end game looks like, again, in gameplay and in deck building. So looking at the deck here, what do you think that the main like plan of a deck is, and what does the end game kind of look like?
I mean, I feel like the end game has existed in a couple different ways. Either I get the aspirants out and they're not dealt with, and then suddenly like things kind of spin out of control with flying creatures. Right, getting a counter on target creature, and then that with Heliod when you're gaining life, right? So just kind of ramping up on the control counters.
Mm-hmm.
This deck does have an Angel of Destiny, which I think I have won with one time, and frankly, every time I pull it, I'm just kind of like, "Ha, I don't think that is like uh, a really reasonable like win condition. So if I was gonna say if there's any one area like a card like that, I feel like has done nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah. So like kind of ramping counters, obviously with like the banishing lights and whatnot, being able to control a little bit, and then also the equips of this one. So I know I just said like 5 things, right?
Exactly.
Which typically you're not going to have 5 things happen in a game. But I was thinking about through all the times like, okay, in this week, how have I won?
Exactly. That's
Right,
the
but
thing.
I
So
feel like the
you fell into my trap card basically, where you said
Yeah.
you said like 5 different things. That's kind of the thing I'm seeing here. Is there's a lot of different things happening here. We have a card like
Yeah.
Luminarch Aspirant, which is a very good aggressive card. It kind of adds counters. It's a good early creature. We have a bit of a life gain theme. We have Heliod, Daxos, which can gain life and kind of gain benefits from that. Angels in that same capacity. A card like Baneslayer Angel is sort of like both a life gain card and then just a really good card in general. Just a very, very powerful creature. There's a bit of an enchantment theme, with the cards like Banishing Light, Archon of Sun's Grace with the Constellation ability to make more creatures. So a little bit of theme of that, a little bit of flyers, a little bit of equipment. So I think the most important thing you can do is sort of like pick one, maybe 2 of the themes if they're thematically joined, and kind of like focus on those and kind of go from there. So if it's going to be a constellation thing, look at more cards like Archon of Sun's Grace, Banishing Light, and then we can see how there's crossover because Heliod is a life gain card, but also an enchantment. Daxos is a life gain card, but also an enchantment. So you can see when you find a common thread like that, that's when you're able to do more than one thing at once. So maybe we keep the Speaker of the Heavens, we keep the Daxos, keep the Skyclave Cleric, Heliod, etc., and sort of do like a combination of a enchantment deck and a life gain deck. But a card like Luminous Broodmoth it's a fine card. One of the buzzwords in Magic is on rate. And what rate means is that the raw numbers in the card. So for example, Baneslayer Angel is a pretty good card on rate. It's a 5/5 flying first strike lifelink for 5 mana. That's a good, efficient, powerful
Right.
card. You know, whereas a card like Angel of Destiny, it's not as good on rate. You know, it's a 2/6.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually deal damage. It has double strike, but it doesn't actually deal damage because they gain the life back. And it kind of has to have like this condition of having 35 life, or it doesn't, kind of like the mill deck, it doesn't really do anything until you hit that condition,
That's
you know?
exactly right.
So on rate, Angel isn't very good. It's just kind of like a weird, finicky, kind of like, we call that magical Christmas land in Magic, you know, where this thing could happen, but it might not also, you know. And if you're not, it's the kind of card where if you're going to play this card, you need to be 110% on life gain all day, every day, you know. So some cards are like that, and then some cards are like Baneslayer Angel. Elspeth Conqueror's Death is a phenomenally powerful card. On raw power alone, it's card advantage because it kills a creature, gets the creature back. It's an enchantment. It's a really, really powerful card. You know, so, you know, the cards you have in your deck that are not going to be good on just like raw rate and power level all need to work together really, really well, or they aren't always worth the slot. So that makes sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Cool.
I mean, I think based off of that, like, yeah, definitely Angel of Destiny, Broodmoth. I think, like, in consideration, there's some, like, I don't even know, you know, like you mentioned the Archon Sun Grace. Like, I personally haven't felt like that has really been one that I've been able to capitalize on very much when playing this deck that often. And I almost find that like the Hollowed Priests, the decks that are getting run right now that are similar, but then every time you heal, you get a 1/1 counter on a Is it a Hollowed Priest? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the 2-mana creature, right?
So like a part of me thinks like less of kind of the cards that you were talking about that are not going to supplement the win condition, and more like what are the things that would trigger the counters.
So the Hallowed Priest is specifically a card it's not good on raw rate, but it's a very high synergy card. So if you have, you know, 4 Speaker of the Heavens and 4 whatever the 1-mana creature is that gains life. Beloved Princess, Lifelinker. You have a whole bunch of 1-mana cards that can gain life, and then 4 copies of your the card we just said, the Priest.
The
Hallowed Priest. You can have 4 of those, and you know, maybe 3 Daxos, and kind of really, really push the life gain theme. Or a card like that isn't good. You know, so he needs to decide. And then Archon of Sun's Grace is the kind of card where it's actually kind of both. So Archon of Sun's Grace, you know, at raw rate, just being a 4-mana 3/4 flyer with lifelink is actually pretty good. You know, that's pretty close to Baneslayer Angel for 4 mana. So like the creature you're getting here is it's not exactly good enough by itself, but it's close. It's not like it's like a total, you know, dead weight without the Constellation trigger. But we only have, let's see, we got 3 Vanishing Light, a Regimen, a Conqueror's Death. So there's like 5 or 6 enchantments in this deck, you know. So you're not really supporting the Constellation theme. So, you know, you can go down that path. I think there's definitely cool Constellation cards. And again, it is really cool that Daxos and Heliod are both enchantments as well, because that allows you to kind of play both sides of the fields. So I think that the Priest was one of those weird cards. There are a few cards that are only available on Magic Arena, and those cards are only playable in best of 1. I don't know why that is. So if you go to your it's behind your webcam on my screen, but click like the deck like the little graph. There you go. And change your format from traditional standard to regular standard.
Oh.
Right. And if you do that, you'll see the Priest. So the Priest is one of those like dozen cards. I don't know why they do that, honestly, because it's kind of weird, because it like this card you're looking at right now doesn't actually exist in Paper Magic. There's no physical version of that card. It's a card they just made for Arena. And there's actually a similar card that exists. It's actually better than it. It's called a Johnny's Pridemate. It's the exact same card, but it's a 2/2. And that card saw a lot of tournament play in life gain decks, because the effect is very, very powerful, but it's not available in Standard. It's only in Historic. So Priest is a weird one because you can only play it in best of 1, which just kind of makes it like a weird card. But
when you as a follow-up question to that, when you like go to edit decks, does it always default to traditional? Like, I wonder why that.
I'm not sure, honestly. When you make a new deck, it might do one or the
I
other.
did that. Yeah, I might have
And you can see
accidentally
in the
done that.
sideboard too, is a slight change between best of one and best of three. In best of one, you're allowed to have a 7-card sideboard, and then those cards are just accessible through your learn lesson cards or any other card that would like go to a card that's outside the game for some reason. So,
Oh,
and they
oh
changed
my
that to be 7
God.
rather
That
than 15.
answers one of the questions that I had about lesson or about learn. Oh my God. That makes so much sense. Sorry, I'm having this moment where I'm just like could not for the life of me figure out why I only had access to certain lesson card. Now I understand, Jim. Now
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
know.
that's a very recent
Now I
change,
know.
and the interface for it is awful. So you open it,
Yeah.
you have to like move cards down and up. So those top 7 cards are considered your like best of one sideboard. Even though you're not sideboarding in a normal sense, that's just where the cards wait for you for lesson and learn and things like that. So right. So right now
Okay.
your sciences are good, your memories are good, but I don't know if you have any lessons that are farther below because those would not be accessible.
Right.
Yes, like prophecy,
Got it.
anatomy, those cards right now aren't available to your thing, which is just like not good design. But they changed it
Okay.
from it used to just be that your 15 card sideboard was available in best of one, but when the lesson mechanic came out, I guess they figured that was like too good, so they knocked it down to 7 cards and made this terrible interface for it. And
Got
I don't
it.
know why exactly,
Got
but
it.
But
Yep, totally makes
yeah,
sense.
my chat's saying, please, Jim, record the last 30 seconds and send it to the arena devs because they need to know how confusing and frustrating the UI is
Honestly,
for that.
please, yeah, do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a new thing because it
Great.
was just with, Strixhaven came out a few months ago, I guess. So I guess it's been a while actually, but still pretty recent. So, but yeah, so the overall big thing is that you really want to be looking at what your theme is, and then usually trying to play, just 4 of your best cards, just 4 of every card that kind of makes a lot of sense. So, look through and think to yourself, what cards work here, what cards don't. For example, Basri Ket. It's an okay planeswalker. It's more of an aggressive card. It's a kind of card that is good with plus one counter synergies. For example, there's a green-white card called Conclave Mentor that says whenever you put a counter on a creature, you add another one. So like that's the kind of deck that Bazir would want to go in, and the kind of cards that Bazir wants to hang out with. I would say on raw like rate and power level alone, Bazir isn't very good. It just an okay card and something really particularly.
Am I blind? Am I not seeing this
It's
in
the
here?
third row, third card from the bottom.
Oh, I
There you
do
go.
see it. Yeah. Yeah,
So
I am not actually feeling that card in this deck at all.
right, because the thing is
In
that
my
it's sort of just a card. There
Yeah.
when you already have a card like that, you look at it and you go, what is Basri Ket accomplishing in my deck? What's his role? What's his in my composition here? What's he doing? And you
You
gotta
know,
have a good answer.
ba-
If you don't have a good answer,
yeah,
then bye Basri. I'll see you later.
adding more counters, to which I would rather have like the sparring regimen enchantment, like a greater chance, because there's only one of these in the deck, so like that is a card that I feel like ramps and synergizes with this deck really well.
Well, the thing is that even
um
then, like Regiment is perhaps the better plus one counter card. But what cards do we have that care about plus one counters?
um I mean, isn't that anything that we can literally have out on the board, whether
Right.
that is a hollow tree or
Generically, like yes, like obviously counters make your things bigger. But is that a goal that this deck needs to accomplish? Is this deck having trouble? So like you're looking at cards as a tool to accomplish a task. Does the
right?
deck need help making creatures to be bigger to break through stalemates, or and then is there a
I
question
see what you're
of is
saying.
Luminarch Aspirant doing that job better than Sparring Regimen?
Right.
And if so, then you want to add a third aspirant before you add your first regiment, and then you're kind of like calling
Right.
down the one of, so kind of like you're playing America's Got Talent or whatever. You're sort of like, all right, well,
Right,
you're off the
right.
island, Survivor. You're off the island now. You're not good enough. You're off the island. You're not good enough, and you're culling it down to where the majority of your deck is going to be cards that are 4-ofs. Because these are your best cards. Why play Regimen if Aspirant just does that job better? And then if we're already playing for Aspirant, we're like, you know what? I wish I had more ways to add counters and break through. Maybe we'll add the Regimen then. But typically a card like that, you're looking for synergy. There are things that care about +1/+1 counters. Whether they'll say add extra counters, or if this creature has a counter, it has first strike or some other tangible benefit for having counters. So like without that, I think Regimen's not like really good enough. Just like by
Got
itself.
it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's helpful.
So you have like Righteous Valkyrie is a very good card if we're playing a lot of angels. It fits well with the life gain theme. This card is one of the key cards in the historic version of the angel life gain deck. There's 4 of this card, non-negotiable. It's a main key component but the thing is, if you're not playing angels and clerics, or you don't care about gaining life, this card's not going to be good. But if you are, it's phenomenal. So sort of like when you look basically for as far as card evaluation goes, when you look at a card, you kind of like ask yourself like, who's this card hang out with? What's this card really want for me? What's this card's friends basically? And then surround them with the other people like it that can make it succeed.
That is going to be super helpful advice going into Friday as well. And I just looked at the time and saw what time it was.
No worries.
I need to wrap up, but this is a good indicator that like could probably do this for another 3 hours.
Oh yeah, the rabbit hole never ends. You just keep going.
It never ends.
Never ends. And the thing is, because there's just so much to talk about and work through and everything like that. It's a lot. And the thing is, you've taken in a lot so far today. So, it's good. It's good for us to stop now. You can go look through decks, whatever, lay in bed, play on whatever, and kind of just like let it coalesce and work all through and stuff like that. So it's,
yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
I marked that one as under construction now. So I'm going to go back and look at it based off of everything that you just said. So, awesome. So on Friday morning, we're gonna draft, right? What kind of draft are we gonna do?
So I think on Friday the best thing to do would be to do a non-player draft, to do one of the bot drafts. So
like the Zendikar, is that what's going up right now?
Oh, there's no. It's only Zendikar.
I think it's only Zendikar right now.
What's up?
I think the quick draft is only Zendikar. Isn't it, the quick draft is the only AI draft, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the goal being that I think that player drafts are infinitely better than bot drafts. Right. Because the whole fun of a draft is people are weird and unpredictable, and like the bot doesn't always replicate that. However, I think that the benefit of the bot draft is it's untimed. So we can talk for a pick about for 2 minutes, and whereas drafts go pretty quick. And there's a lot to talk about in different packs and different cards, stuff like that. So it can be a little rushed. So we'll discuss it. We'll figure out what we think is better. Because Zendikar Rising is a set that I'm not super familiar with. So
I know a little bit about Zendikar.
Yeah, I actually skipped that set completely. I didn't do any drafts in my set at all.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I decided to do my Bronze to Mythic every season during Kaldheim. So Zendikar Rising I just skipped completely. I did like 1 or 2 drafts total. So yeah, we'll discuss what we want to do. People are in chat are saying that doing sealed is a possibility too. I think sealed it's fine, but it's like less dynamic than draft, and it's honestly a lot more to take in at once because you're just like, here's 80 cards, not 10 cards, and it's a lot to do, kind of like different components and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll figure it out. People are saying in chat there's also like a draft sim we can do, which would just be like on a website.
Also, it says that there's 36 hours and 45 minutes left in this quick draft.
Oh, it might rotate.
It sounds like it's going to reset, which would be around 8 or 9, right?
Yeah, that's perfect, actually.
So maybe we'll get surprised by that.
Yeah, we'll see what it is, and then if it's basically any other format, I'm pretty happy with it. But the most important thing would be just kind of to have the time to talk through it, because you could talk through a draft for 3 hours. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting things happening as far as building your deck, kind of like reading the signals of like understanding that in a draft, it's your job to cooperate with people around you. You want their decks to be good too. So their decks are good,
Right.
your decks are good. You're not fighting over cards, and everyone's happy. But that's its own little thing too. So I'll let you go tonight. That'll be on Friday. We'll go over that a little bit more.
Awesome.
And then we'll figure out what format we're gonna play on off stream, which is cool. So
Okay. Awesome.
Great.
I really appreciate the chat tonight. I definitely learned a lot. I'm gonna soak all this in and process it. I'm looking forward to Friday as well. That's really exciting because I'm excited to draft a little bit.
should be great. It's been a lot of fun. Definitely, it's just like fun, as I said, sort of like you're like. What's the the quote from the movie? You're in the very first steps of the journey. Like I envy you, kind of thing. So it's cool. It's a lot of fun.
Great, awesome. Well, I had a lot of fun.
So we'll chat on Discord. We'll figure out Friday, and then I'll talk to you then. That's great.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Jim. Thanks everyone over on Jim's chat. I appreciate you're all amazing people. Thank you for the thoughts, the suggestions I've been reading as well. I appreciate all the knowledge. So thank you all, and I'll see you Friday.
Sounds good. Thanks, Marcus.
All right, later, man. Bye-bye.
It's me. All right, so that was really cool. Marcus is great. Marcus is I'm I won't say it's like starstruck, but like it's really, really cool because I when I met Marcus, he was like, interviewing me at this tournament. Then I met him again at TwitchCon. He was like running the panel that I was working on. As far as like it was like a panel I took was like a 5-hour course on like being a streamer and stuff like that. So really, really cool to get to work with Marcus on this. A lot of fun, and just like I said, it's so fun to see the sort of the starry-eyed wonder of someone who's kind of just getting into the real meat of the game, which is so cool. So YouTube folks, hope you enjoyed this. We're doing a draft on Friday, so Friday morning we'll do that. And if you're on YouTube, you'll see it on YouTube as well. And we're gonna go through a draft to kind of go. It's gonna be a real good meat and potatoes, sort of like learning a draft, going through the cards, things like that. Should be really, really cool. So YouTube folks, I love you. Let me know if you enjoyed this content. This be a fun thing to do, maybe to get other people on who are Magic playing, but not necessarily in the main Magic sphere. I think the cross collaboration is very, very cool. So YouTube folks, I love you. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts. Thanks, YouTube. Appreciate it.